Welcome back to the CTO Playbook, the podcast dedicated to helping CTOs excel. What if the most sophisticated decision engine in your company is not your data, not your dashboards, not your AI, but your gut? In this episode of the CTO Playbook, we're unpacking the secret life of instinct, what it really is, when to trust it, and when to challenge it. You'll hear how experienced CTOs use their gut as a strategic asset, not a coin toss. And you'll leave with a practical way to turn "I just feel it" into confident, defensible decisions. In an era of instant feedback from Gen AI, the ability to provide instant feedback from our instincts is more critical than ever before. I'm your host, Adam Horner, coach to CTOs from startups to enterprises, helping you lead with clarity, confidence, and strategic impact. If you feel like you're figuring it out the hard way, you're not alone. That's why I created the CTO Playbook, a podcast and platform built for tech leaders just like you. Now let's unpack the Gut Instincts Playbook. We talk a lot about strategy, architecture, process, regulation, but not the thing that sits underneath almost every important decision. If you're good at listening to gut instinct today, how do you know you can trust it tomorrow? I want to start with a story from my coaching practice. I'll change a few details for confidentiality, but the essence is true. Picture a Thursday afternoon. Late in the quarter, a CTO, I'll call him James, is sitting in yet another product prioritization meeting. The board want growth, sales want features, customer success want stability, and engineering want a holiday. You know how it is. On the wall are 4 big initiatives. A major new integration the sales team say is deal critical, a deep refactor of the reporting engine that's been creaking for years, a new AI feature the CEO is quietly in love with, and a long list of customer requests that have been piling up. The mood in the room is upbeat. People are smiling. The CEO is animated, and the head of product is already talking in quarters and milestones. And James can feel it. That slow, heavy, uncomfortable sense in his stomach. This is wrong. Not because the ideas are bad, not because people are unreasonable, but because something about the mix to him feels off. He's been here before. At his last company, they did exactly this, chased a shiny integration and a flashy new feature at the same time while the platform creaked underneath them. It looked fine, right up until the quarter before a big funding round when performance cratered and customers started quietly leaving. He still remembers those late nights, the loss of key engineer, the uncomfortable board conversations that followed it. So in this meeting, his gut instinct is screaming a very specific message. If you do all 4, you'll do none of them well and the platform won't cope. But here's the twist. He doesn't trust his gut. Because 6 months ago, in another meeting, he pushed back strongly on a product idea that his gut instinct didn't like. And yet, he was wrong. He argued against it. The team did it anyway, and it landed brilliantly. And that experience shook him. Ever since, he's been second-guessing himself. Is this my experience talking, or is this my anxiety talking? Am I seeing a real pattern, or just being conservative? Is my gut instinct wise, or is it out of date? So, in that room, with the roadmap on the wall on the screen, and the energy rising, he swallows the discomfort. He asks a few questions about scope. He gently nudges timelines, but he doesn't say the thing that his gut instinct is shouting at him internally. We're overcommitting again. 3 months later, he's in my coaching session, exhausted. The refactor's half done. The integration is running late. The AI feature works sometimes. And the engineers are juggling incidents. And he says to me, I knew this was a bad mix. I felt it in my bones, but after getting it wrong last time, I didn't trust myself enough to push back. This feeling, this is the heart of today's episode. Not just should we trust our instincts, but what is gut instinct actually made of? When should we trust it? When should we challenge it? And how do we keep training it instead of freezing or ignoring it? Because here's a little theme that I want to try and carry through the episode. Gut instinct is not magic. It's your experience compressed into a feeling. So we're going to unpack that. We'll look at when it helps, when it misleads, and how to use it like a seasoned CTO, not a nervous passenger. And as always, we'll finish with a CTO playbook that you can put straight to work. So let's start with a simple question. What do we actually mean when we say, my gut instinct says, as engineers and technologists, we're used to being able to explain things, why the system is slow, why the query is inefficient, why the architecture won't scale beyond a certain point. But gut instinct is the opposite of that. Your gut instinct rarely gives you a sentence. It gives you a signal, a tight chest, a sinking feeling, an odd sense of calm before the storm, a quiet yes or no you can't immediately justify. From a leadership perspective, this can feel uncomfortably vague. So we tend to do one of two things. We over-glorify our gut instinct. I'll just go with my gut. It's always served me well. Or we over-suppress it. If I can't justify it in a slide deck, I shouldn't say it. Both of these two are dangerous extremes. Here's a slightly more helpful reality. Your gut instinct is your accumulated experience doing pattern matching faster than you can explain. All those outages you've seen, all the launches that slipped, all the roadmaps that became wish lists, all the hires that worked and the ones that didn't, your brain doesn't store those as a neat spreadsheet. It stores them as patterns. Over time, those patterns get so familiar that your brain can spot one before you consciously do so. So you feel it as, this looks like the project that blew up in 2019. This candidate reminds me of someone who struggled right here. This timeline smells optimistic, even if you can't immediately explain why. And that's what I mean when I say your gut instinct is your experience compressed into a feeling. But, and this is critical for us as CTOs, our compressed experience only helps where we actually have experience. If we spent 10 years scaling back-end systems, our gut instinct about scalability is probably pretty good. If you've never led an M&A integration before, your gut instinct about how long it will take, it's going to be a guess wrapped in some level of confidence. So let me give you a technical metaphor that you can carry around with you and use it. Treat your gut instinct like a cached function. Lightning fast, often right, but the whole function is occasionally stale. When the inputs look like something you've seen many times before, your cache can respond instantly and effectively. This team is overloaded. That vendor is overpromising. We are underestimating security risk here. You can't always show the full call stack, but the result is based on lots of prior runs. However, just like any cache, it can be out of date when the environment changes. It can be poisoned by a few extreme experiences. And it can be empty when you're in truly new territory. Part of becoming a strategic CTO is learning when to trust the cache and when to force a fresh computation. We'll come back to that. But first, I want to pause and hand the mic to you for a second. If you're not driving or you're not on the treadmill, you might even write this down. But don't judge. There's a surprising number of you that tell me that you listen to this podcast when you're in the gym. And I love it. It's great. So let's think back over the last 3 to 6 months. Where did your gut instinct send you a clear signal, yes, no, or something's off, that turned out to be either 1, correct, 2, incorrect, so wrong, or 3, where it was ignored and you're still not quite sure of the answer? Once you've done that, what patterns do you notice? Are there particular domains where your instincts are consistently reliable and others where they're a bit more erratic? Just notice it for now, because once you see where your cache is strong and where it's weak, you can start using it deliberately instead of trusting it blindly. So let's go back to James now, the CTO from our opening story. See, when he and I unpacked that painful quarter, we didn't start with blame, we started with data. We laid out the timeline on a board, when decisions were taken, what his gut instinct was saying at each point, what he did or did not say, and what actually happened. And unsurprisingly, a pattern emerged. His gut instinct was remarkably accurate in areas where he had lots of experience. Overcommitment of teams, underestimation of refactoring complexity, and things like performance cliffs under load. But his gut instinct was less reliable in areas where he had less or no experience, or in some cases, a high emotional charge that went with it. So new markets, area of weakness, not enough data. Big swings in in product strategy, not as familiar with those, and so therefore not as much background data to draw on. Or anything that smelt like the previous failure where he'd been wrong. And this typically looked like a very strong emotional reaction to it. So we worked on a simple rule of thumb. And this is something that you can use too. When the situation is familiar and the stakes are high, treat your gut instinct as an early warning system. However, when the situation is genuinely new, treat your gut instinct as one input amongst many, not the truth. Let's have a look at a contrasting story where a CTO used their gut instinct well, but with guardrails. This time it's a CTO, and I'm going to call her Layla. She'd taken over a scale-up whose platform had done what successful platforms do. It had grown into a big, beautiful, terrifying ball of mud. A mess. Every quarter, someone would suggest the classic solution. Let's just rewrite the whole thing. And every quarter, Layla felt that familiar, cold sensation in her stomach. She'd seen rewrites before. She'd lived through one that had stalled a company for 18 months. And so her gut instinct said, full rewrite equals incredibly dangerous. But here's the key difference. Instead of simply vetoing it based on instinct, she did 3 things. 1, she honored the signal. She didn't dismiss it as irrational. She recognized it came from real experience. 2, she made the pattern explicit. She literally drew out on a flip chart. Last time I saw a rewrite, here's what happened. Teams had split focus. Old platform got no love. New platform slipped, morale tanked, etc. Then 3, she tested her gut instinct against the data. How much tech debt do we really have? Where are the hotspots in the code base? What's our incident rate in our support process? What's our deployment frequency of new releases? And what revenue depends on the messiest parts of the code base? And what she discovered surprised her. The situation in this company was similar, but not identical to her previous situations. The platform was messy, yes, but a lot of the pain was concentrated in very specific subsystems. It wasn't everywhere, it wasn't general. So instead of a full rewrite, with the team, she designed a staged modernization, isolating the worst bits, wrapping them with clear interfaces to isolate them, and then gradually replace the code behind those interfaces with a new architecture. And they kept shipping value as they did that. Her gut instinct said, don't rewrite everything. The data said, something has to change. So the solution that they came up with honored both. And when together we looked back 6 months later, the outcomes were pretty clear. Incident rates were down, team morale was up, as was trust, and there was no lost year of feature delivery. In all, therefore, it was a far less risky process than the classic Big Bang rewrite. So what actually happened here? Layla used her gut instinct is exactly the way I'd love every CTO to use it. Gut instinct is a starting signal, not a finishing argument. And she treated her gut instinct as what it really is. Her gut instinct was her experience doing pattern matching faster than she could consciously think through it. It's not a verdict, but it's a very strong hypothesis. So here's a second coaching style question that you can carry into your week. Think of a decision that you're wrestling with right now. It might be a senior hire, a platform change, a vendor choice, a reorganization, or a risk that you're considering taking. You get the idea. Fairly big decisions we want to be thinking about here. Now ask yourself 3 questions. I love that number 3. It's a magic number. Number 1, what is my gut instinct saying to me in plain, specific language? Not just, this feels off, but more like, my gut instinct is warning me about X, right, where X is something quite specific. 2, how much real experience do I actually have in this specific type of situation? Is this well-trodden path for me, done it lots of times? Or is this mostly new territory? Or something in between? And then 3, what data, experiments, or perspectives would help me validate or refine this gut instinct signal? So you think about who you can talk to. Think about what we can measure. Think about what small tests we can run to get a litmus test on this. Write the answers down. It's quite important to do that. You write it down at a point in time. It gives you something you can refer back to, and it means that you cannot therefore just ignore or change what your gut instinct was telling you after the fact. And then notice what changes when you treat your gut instinct as a hypothesis to be explored rather than a voice to ignore or obey. Now, so far we've talked about how to trust our instincts more intelligently. But there's another edge to this too. Sometimes as a CTO, we have to deliberately go against our gut instincts on purpose. That might sound odd, so let me explain. Let's go back to our cached function metaphor, right? There are at least 3 situations where your internal cache is likely to be wrong or misleading. One is fairly obvious when you're outside your historical experience. New market, new scale, new business model, new kind of team. 2, you can be in a situation that resembles a past trauma, a project that blew up, a conflict that went badly, a board meeting where you felt humiliated. In these situations, it's your emotion that's talking louder and your instincts are trying to protect you. 3, your incentives, your fears, or your ego are strongly involved. You might want to protect your status. You don't want to feel stupid or exposed. Or maybe you're afraid of conflict with a powerful stakeholder. In these situations, your gut instinct isn't just pattern matching. It's trying to protect you. Protection is useful, but it can also freeze you in place. I'll give you a quick example from my own journey. Years ago, I was in a company where we needed to pivot the product strategy quite dramatically. On paper, the pivot made a lot of sense. The market signals lined up. The old approach had hit a bit of a ceiling, but my gut instinct hated it. It reminded me of a previous handbrake turn pivot where I'd spent months in a fog of uncertainty, convinced every other week that they were about to crash the car. My instincts were saying, this is dangerous, don't do it, stay where you are, it's safer. And for a while, I listened, I hesitated, I dragged my feet. I asked for a little bit more evidence, not because the case was weak, but because I was a little bit rattled, honestly. But eventually I came to this realization, and quite an important one. My gut instinct wasn't warning me about the strategy. It was warning me about the discomfort that I was probably going to face. Now, once I could see that, I could separate between the two. Is the strategy sound? Or am I just a bit scared because last time it was painful? And when I looked at it with that lens, it became a little bit clearer. Intellectually, I believed in the pivot. Emotionally, I was bracing for the crash, right? So I made a conscious choice. In this case, I'm going to override my gut instinct, but stay very awake as we go. So we put extra checkpoints in place. I surrounded the decision with more feedback loops, and I made space for my fear, but I did not let it drive. And that combination of respecting the feeling, but not obeying it, I think it made me a better leader. Because here's the thing that I need you to hear. Sometimes growth requires us to walk into spaces where our gut instinct has no map. That's not a sign that we're wrong. It's a sign that we're expanding our experience. Which brings us to maybe the most important part of this whole conversation. Now, we've talked about what gut instinct is. We've talked about when to trust it, when to question it, and when to intentionally walk against it. But there's a bigger question underneath all of this. How do we keep improving our instincts as a CTO? Because if our gut instinct is made from experience, then the quality of our instincts depends on the experiences that we have, how honestly we reflect on them, and how quickly we own our own mistakes. And when I look at the CTOs who make the fastest leaps in their leadership, they have one thing in common. They treat mistakes as training data, not as shame. They don't pretend everything was fine. They don't quietly rewrite history. They say, out loud if necessary, I called this wrong. My gut instinct said X and reality said Y. Here's what I'm learning for next time. And they do it quickly, while the memory is still fresh. That speed is really important, because if you wait 6 months, your brain has already quietly filed those experiences onto vague discomfort. But if you reflect on them while it's still raw, you can do something much more powerful. You can update the pattern. You can turn my gut instinct says launches are scary into my gut instinct says launches are scary when we don't involve QA early and ignore performance testing. Very different instincts. The first one can paralyze you. The second one will guide you. So if there's one habit I'd love you to take from this episode is this. After every meaningful decision, especially the ones where your gut instinct was loud about it, run a tiny retrospective on your own instinct. Ask yourself, what was my gut instinct saying? What did I actually decide? What happened in the end? What did I miss? And what will I do or think differently next time? Treat it like debugging your own intuition, right? Because remember our core line for the third time. This is slightly different. Your gut instinct is the compressed archive of everything you've already learned. Every time you honestly own a mistake, you're retraining that archive. And there is nothing artificial about that intelligence. That's how you become the CTO who can say, I trust my instincts and I know how to check them. So let's pull this together into something we can actually use. You can think of this as the gut instinct playbook for CTOs, if you like. A set of steps you can return to whenever you're facing a decision that feels more felt than fully reasoned. So, step 1, name the signal. Before anything else, make the implicit explicit. So you can ask yourself, what exactly is my gut instinct telling me in plain, specific language? What might that look like? Take 60 seconds and write down a single sentence starting with, my gut instinct is warning me that X. Or, my gut instinct is excited about Y. Force yourself to be specific, not this feels risky, but something more like, my gut instinct says the deadline will put the team into chronic overtime. If you're comfortable, share that sentence with somebody you trust, a trusted peer, or your leadership team, or your coach. Step 2, check the experience behind it. Ask yourself, how well trained is this gut instinct feeling? Do I have enough real experiences in this type of situation for my instinct to be meaningful? What can you do? You can quickly list 3 to 5 past situations that feel similar. Note what happened in each one, success, partial failure, partial success. If you're struggling to find any, that's a clue. Your gut instinct is running on imagination, not experience, right? You're at risk of hallucinations here. In those cases, consciously label it. This is an untrained instinct. Step 3, turn that instinct into a hypothesis, not a verdict. Don't let your gut instinct become a silent dictator or a silent prisoner. Ask yourself, how can I turn this feeling into a testable hypothesis? So rewrite your gut instinct statement as, if we do X, I predict Y will happen within Z timeframe. Example, if we commit to all 4 initiatives, I predict we'll breach our SLA within the next quarter. And ask yourself, what data would support this? What data would challenge this? Design a small experimental piece of analysis to pressure test the hypothesis before you commit fully. Step 4, decide, trust, temper, or override. So now you can decide consciously what to do with the signal. Given my experience, the data, and the stakes, do I trust this instinct fully? Do I temper it? Or do I override it? So you can trust it fully when the situation is familiar, when the track record in the domain is strong, the cost of ignoring instinct is high. Temper it when you have some experience but the context has changed. The gut instinct is loud, but the data is mixed. You can mitigate risk with guardrails, pilots, or phased rollouts. Override it when the situation is truly new and your gut instinct is mostly fear. When your instinct conflicts with clear, high-quality evidence, or when you recognize that you've got a personal bias, status, ego, old wounds, whatever you pick, say it to yourself. In this decision, I'm choosing to trust, temper, or override my gut instinct, and here's why. That conscious framing alone makes you a more deliberate leader. So, step 5 then. Build feedback loops around our decisions. See, our decisions don't end when we choose. They end when we learn. So what feedback loops will tell me whether my instinct or my override was accurate? So before implementing, we can answer to ourselves, what would right look like in 4 to 12 weeks? And therefore, what would wrong look like? You can then set a few concrete signals that you'll watch out for. And they could be things like incident rate, it could be like team sentiment. Maybe it's something like the sales cycle length that's slightly disconnected from the actual engineering work, but still related to the effect, the impact of the work you've done. It could be something like customer churn. Put a date in the calendar for when you will do that mini gut instinct retrospective. Then step 6, run the gut instinct retrospective. So this is where you're going to train your cache. How will I use this decision, right or wrong, as training data for my future gut instincts? So what can we do? We can ask ourselves, what was my gut instinct saying? What did I do? What happened? Where was my instinct sharp and where was it off? And then you can just capture one simple sentence of learning. Next time I see this pattern, I will do this. And if your call was wrong, admit it to yourself and say it to yourself quickly. To yourself, to your team, to your peers. Not with self-flagellation, right? You're not telling yourself off, but you're creating clarity. I pushed for this. It wasn't the right call. Here's what I've learned, and here's what I'm going to do next time. Over time, this habit does something really, really powerful. It upgrades our gut instincts from loud feelings to well-calibrated instruments. And that's when you become the CTO whose instincts others trust, even before they see the slide deck. As we wrap up then, I want to bring us back to where we started. A CTO in a meeting feeling that quiet sense of uh-oh, and not knowing whether to honor it or ignore it. We've unpacked a lot today, so let's try and distill this down to the essence of it. Gut instinct isn't mystical. It's your hard-won experience compressed into a quick signal. In familiar territories, your gut instinct can be one of your most valuable tools, especially when the stakes are high and time is short. In new or emotionally charged territory, your gut instinct is still useful, but treated as one input amongst many, not the unquestioned voice of truth. And you will sometimes go against your gut instinct, and that's okay too. That's how you expand your experience and teach your instincts new patterns. The real magic is not having good instincts, it's continuously training them. By owning mistakes quickly, running small gut instinct retrospectives, and treating every decision as training data. I mean, if you take nothing else from this episode, please take this. You're allowed to trust your gut instinct, and you're allowed to question it. Both are signs of a mature leader. You don't have to choose between being data-driven and being instinct-led. The best CTOs I work with describe themselves as both. They let their gut instinct raise the flag, they let their brain interrogate the flag, and they let reality update them every time. And that's how you go from, I'm not sure if I can trust my instincts, to, I know what my instincts are good at, I know their limits, and I know how to keep improving them. And that's what a strategic storytelling executive CTO looks like. Thank you for listening to the CTO Playbook. I'm Adam Horner, CTO coach and fractional CTO at Sonova Technology and author of the CTO Playbook. If this episode has sparked something for you, if you've recognized your own relationship with gut instinct in any of these stories, I'd invite you to take a real decision you're facing right now, run it through the gut instinct playbook you've just heard, and notice what shifts in your clarity, your confidence, and your conversations with others. If you'd like support in building your own CTO playbook, including how to make better, faster, more confident decisions, you can learn more about coaching and strategy workshops at thectoplaybook.com. Until next time, trust you have good instincts, train them, and lead with calm, strategic confidence. You're more ready than you think. Thank you for listening to the whole episode. I appreciate your time. So just before you go, I'd like to ask you for a favor in return for putting together this episode of the CTO Playbook for you. Please share the episode with just one person who will appreciate it. Wherever you're listening, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or another platform, sharing the episode will help more CTOs find the podcast and enable me to create more great content. Remember that you can find more information on the CTOplaybook.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the CTO Playbook.